Howdy guys, welcome to the channel and welcome to the homestead. This evening I'm going to be making wild game jerky. Be walking through my process on how I make two different kinds of wild game jerky. Now, this method and recipe will easily translate to beef if you want to go to the store and just buy some stuff. But I prefer to harvest it myself. And so I'm going to be using, for ground meat jerky, a moose that I harvested in 2013 here in northeastern Vermont. And also for whole muscle jerky, I'm using this doe that I just harvested last week, and it's never been frozen, just straight fresh going into the jerky. Now, I'm using a store-bought jerky cure for my ground meat, and the reason I like to do that is because the store-bought stuff, it comes with a cure, nitrates and nitrates. Some people are opposed to that, but personally, I like to use it when I have ground meat because the concept of making jerky is to get all the moisture out of the meat. That's why we're using the dehydrator. And when we dehydrate it, it dries everything up. And the moisture is where that bacteria and harmful organisms that can make you sick live. When we have a whole muscle, there's no place for the moisture to go. It's on the outside of the meat. So it dries up real easily. We don't have to worry about it. But when we have the ground meat, all the moisture lives inside, in the grinds. The outside will dry. The inside can still be moist. So we have to make sure we really get it completely dry. But adding that extra peace of mind with the nitrates and nitrates, it just makes me feel a little bit safer. And the easy way we're going to do that is we're going to stuff it in this jerky gun that we got from Weston, and picked it up at Walmart, honestly, with this. At the same time, we spend less than 20 bucks on it. It's going to make our life a lot easier. Previously to this, I've made about 30 pounds of moose jerky out of these grinds in the last 7 years, and I would roll them between pieces of parchment paper to get them thin enough to get on the tray, and I just never took the time to invest in a jerky gun. This year I decided I'm going to grab a jerky gun, use it for the last 10 pounds of this, and last time I did it with the last 5 pounds, it was so much easier. It took in 5 minutes what I would have done in a half hour or more. So I highly recommend getting the jerky gun, and if you want to try the store-made seasonings, go ahead. Some people prefer to make their own. That's what I'm going to be doing with the whole muscle. So I've already got my ground meat seasoned with my jerky seasoning. I didn't think I had to show you guys how to do that because there's instructions in the box, and all you really got to do is mix the cure and the seasoning flavors with the meat really well, cover it back up, put it in the fridge for a few hours. I like to do it before I go to work, and then when I come home at night, it's ready to put into the jerky gun and onto the trays. And I find the easiest way to do that is just with your bare hands. I'm a meat guy, so I don't mind touching meat with my bare hands. I just always wash them really well. And I like to just take a big handful and kind of form it into a cylinder just a little bit smaller than what the tube is. And we just pat it and roll it between the hands. And I like to really make sure there's no air stuck between the meat because that'll just make it come out of the gun a little bit strange. Now, the way the gun works is just like a caulking gun, if you've ever used one of them. There's a plunger inside that you pull back, and when you stuff it in there, it engages the trigger. Every time you pull the trigger, it will push whatever's inside out. They also give you this handy little plunger that you can push it down and pack everything down with. So we're going to go ahead and get this first gun filled up. This one here holds 1 pound of meat. They make bigger ones that hold 2 pounds, but I find this is sufficient for what we're going to do. Get our jerky gun full. Now we've got a few different varieties of nozzles we can use. We're going to use the nozzle that gives us some flat jerky sticks, and also a nozzle that gives us some round jerky sticks. So we'll start with the flat ones. Now, I like to squeeze this out evenly and in a somewhat upright position, because it just seems like it gets the meat nice and flat. Just keep giving it a squeeze until it comes out. Unfortunately, my battery died on the camera while I was pumping out the flat style jerky. But it's not a big deal, because it's really all the same way. You just hold the gun. I find now that it works pretty good at like a 45-degree angle. I'm using a GoPro Hero 8, and ever since I started using this camera, I've had issues with the battery life. I got a spare battery, and I just try to keep them charged, but it really seems like it doesn't last as long as I'd like. If you guys had any experience with the GoPro and battery issues or whatnot, leave some comments. So it's simple. We just work our way around, fill up the tray, until the gun's empty. Fill it with some more meat, and repeat the process. Once we've got all of our grinds pushed through our jerky gun and onto the trays, we load the trays onto the dehydrator, plug it in, and turn it on. It's as simple as that. I've got this old school The Food dehydrator from Mr. Coffee. It was a hand-me-down, and it's always worked really good for me. And I use the philosophy of, if it's not broke, why fix it? Maybe someday I'll have to replace it, but for now, this thing works good. You might have one that has a temperature gauge. You gotta adjust 150 or 160, and that'll be fine. And if you don't have a dehydrator, you could also put all your meat onto wire racks and bake it in the oven at 150. So we're gonna let this sit for like 8 to 12 hours. It really depends. I like to go to sleep and just leave it going. When I wake up in the morning, I check it out and to see how the jerky looks. Occasionally, I gotta move the trays up higher or lower, depending on if the top one hasn't dried as much as the bottom one, because the fan's on the bottom, it pushes the air up. Sometimes it's not sealed great, and you know, this old school thing, it's got to be tinkered with a bit, so we do that. And I've got my jerky gun set aside. I make sure I pull every piece of that apart, clean it all really well. I kept the manufacturer's box, so I just pack it in the box, put it away in the cupboard. And while we've got that going on, now we can mix up the seasoning, the homemade recipe for our whole muscle jerky. Now, I can't take credit for this recipe. I actually got it given to me by my meat manager. He gave me a photocopy that he had out of some wild game book, and it's called The Alaskan Jerky Recipe. And the author of the book, which I can't credit because I don't know who he is, but he gives credit to a lady named Karen Cotillion, who wrote an article in the Alaska Fish and Game magazine and gave us this recipe. So what we use is soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, or however you like to say it, onion powder, garlic powder, liquid smoke, black pepper, some chili pepper flakes if you like. I went with a hickory flavored liquid smoke because I had the hickory seasoning for the ground jerky, and I thought we'd do kind of a flavor comparison and see which one we like best. I'm going to go ahead and mix up this recipe per the instructions. It doesn't really tell me how much meat to use, but we'll see if it covers the amount of meat that I have, and then if not, we'll just make another batch. So the first thing we use is the soy sauce, and it takes a half a cup. And then another half cup of the Worcestershire sauce. Tablespoon each of black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and liquid smoke. I got this thick cut butcher black pepper that I've had in the cupboard, and I like to sprinkle this on my ribeye steaks and whatnot. I thought it'd be good for the jerky because it'll give it that nice, solid, thick seasoning that we like to have. I've also got some chili pepper flakes, and I'm not going to use too many of those because I don't want it to be too spicy. But I do like a little bit of kick here and there. So I'm just going to add a slight pinch of chili peppers. And I just realized the recipe also says you can add Tabasco sauce to taste if you like. I don't believe I have any Tabasco sauce hanging around, but there is one thing I do have. I got a little bottle of this ass-kicking Scorpion hot sauce. I really like this stuff. I like to put it on my eggs and whatnot, and it's pretty potent. So we're gonna just add a couple drops in there for good measure. Nice. We'll whisk it all together. Kind of let it blend. Like I said, I'm using some doe meat that I just harvested last week. I was actually fortunate enough to win myself a permit in the antlerless lottery for muzzleloader, and they had an early season this year in October, where traditionally I'm hunting with a muzzleloader in late December, and for quite a few years I applied for antlerless permits, and I'd get one anywhere in the state that I got one. I would pick a WMA, which is public land in the state of Vermont, and I'd go there, scout it out, and hunt for whitetail deer. And, you know, it was a great time. Luckily this year, I got one right in my home turf, and I was able to score on this doe on the very last day when I was hunting with my father. And she was about 130 pounds, gave me quite a bit of meat, and I used the bottom rounds and the inside round of the other leg for this jerky. I find it comforting that whenever I'm working with food, whether it be baking or cooking an everyday meal or cutting meat, making jerky like today, there's always some time when you just get to think and reflect, be thankful for what you have and your ability to provide. When I'm working with my wild game, I'm always reminiscing about the hunt and the events that lead it up to the harvest. Also, I'm always thankful for the years of knowledge and experience I've gained in the woods and my woodmanship skills that have given me the ability to not just provide sustenance for my family, but a quality meal of something local and organic and free range. You know, even in a case like today where it's jerky, it's just going to be our everyday snack, or even my snack that I take in the woods. But it's comforting to know that, you know, it came from our land, came from Vermont. And that's really been a major mission of mine for most of my life, but especially in the recent years. It's the reason why I decided to start this channel, the reason why I decided to embark on my homesteading journey, just to create a sustainable life for myself and my family, to live a little closer to nature and closer to the region that we live in. I was born and raised in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. I've lived here my whole life. I'm a single father, and I work full-time as a meat cutter. I've owned my own home here in the NEK for 11 years now, and I have about 8 acres, a little under the 8 acres. This year I tapped a big maple tree in my front yard and boiled my own sap. I grew a huge garden and got loads of green beans and dried beans and carrots and corn. And the biggest endeavor I took on this year on a homestead was, for the first time, I raised 24 meat chickens and slaughtered them all, and I have my freezer full of homegrown chicken. And in order to do a lot of these things, I used YouTube. I looked up YouTube videos, and I came across quite a few different YouTubers who are starting their homestead, and it's just such a great little community that these people have out here, and I just wanted to become part of that, and they really inspired me to continue my homesteading journey, and not just that, but to go ahead and create videos. For a long time, ever since I was a kid, I've always been a content creator in a way. I made home videos, and I always aspired to produce movies or TV shows or whatever. I went to college for a time to learn TV production. I ended up dropping out of school to pursue another path in life. I was more focused on social aspects, and I had other goals in mind, which led me to where I am today. And I believe that I have a voice and I have a story to tell, and hopefully the content that I create and the things I'm doing in my journey as a homesteader might help some other people in their journey, or at least might just create a little enjoyment for you guys, you know, and a little entertainment. Ready to check on our ground meat jerky, see if it's completely dehydrated yet. I realized while I was making the video and making the jerky last night that I kind of had poor quality light over here in the kitchen, and when I was at Lowe's picking up some items for another project, I picked up these new lights that stick underneath here and give me a little more illumination to work with, and hopefully you guys see the video better. So these things are called the Eco Light, and came in a pack of 6 little pushable lights, and these things unscrew from the bottom just like so. You put the little sticker tabs on here, stick them up. That's for temporary use. You can also screw them up. I chose to go with the sticks just in case I didn't like how they worked. One thing is they do all require 3 AA batteries, and so that might get a little expensive when it's time to replace them. But anyway, they seem to light the place up pretty good, and I'm happy with them for now. On to the jerky, the ground meat jerky. So I'll turn it off and let's just see if everything's nice and crisp, breaks easily, or bends, breaks. All the stuff in the middle is nice and dry. I always like to check right in the middle around the ring. That seems to be the place where it stays most moist. And these are the thicker ones. So as long as they're good, we should be fine. Looks nice. Looks great. So let's ask the experts what they think. Lorelai, would you like some jerky? Puppy?
Why?
You gonna tell them what you think?
Delicious.
You wanna try some jerky? You need to sit. You need to sit if you want it.
Sit. Come back over here.
She can sit where she wants.
Sit.
Let her sit. Sit.
Sit.
Good girl. Good girl.
You did it. Crazy.
Good girl. Kid approved, doggo approved.
Doggo approved.
Okay, you wanna help me package it up? So when we package our jerky up, I like to use these reusable Ziploc bags. They're made by this company, Full Circle. I got them at my local co-op where I work as meat cutter. And they save on plastic waste in the trash, and they're actually really handy. I use them for a lot of stuff around the house. So, we just stuff them full of the bag.
Okay. We use them. Don't we use them for like the chicken and stuff?
You know, maybe just freezer bags for the chicken.
Oh. And what do we use them for?
I use these for Cabot cheese because when we buy the Cabot cheese, it doesn't have a resealable pouch.
Okay.
The final step in our process for making two different kinds of wild game jerky is dehydrating the whole muscle. We've had this whole muscle marinating in our homemade marinade in the fridge for about 12 hours. The same amount of time that our ground meat was dehydrating. Now, this is my first time ever making whole muscle jerky, so I wasn't sure if I should pat off the marinade before placing it on the trays, but that's essentially the dehydrator's job, so I think I'll just let it do its job. If you've ever made your own jerky before and you've got some tips or tricks, feel free to leave a comment, and I'm always welcome to advice and ways to improve the things that I do around the homestead. I wanted to take this time and just thank everybody for watching this video and coming along. I had a lot of fun making jerky. It's one of my favorite things to do with the wild game that I harvest. And my father, he helped me drag the deer out of the woods, so he said in return I had to give him some jerky. So I had to go ahead and make some. I'm glad I did, because it gave me this opportunity to make a quick little video for you guys and introduce you to the homestead, introduce you to myself, just get over that initial hurdle of getting some content out there, creating my first video for YouTube, and getting the channel off the ground and running. It's a little bit intimidating to open yourself up and share your world with complete strangers, but I truly believe that YouTube adds a lot of value to people's lives, and it gives us a little bit of a social connection where, in a world where we're supposed to be socially distant and there's a lot of scary things going on, it just kind of makes you feel like you're a little bit more part of a community. I got a lot of projects around the homestead and a lot of dreams and goals I have for my homesteading journey, and I'm really anxious to share them with you guys and continue to make videos and put it out there. I appreciate any comments or any feedback that anybody might have, and if there's anything you might want to see, just let me know and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Thanks for coming along, guys. I can't wait to try out this whole muscle jerky when it finishes drying, so that should be done in, like I said, with the other stuff, probably 8 to 12 hours. We're going to look at it when we wake up in the morning. The whole muscle jerky finally finished dehydrating, so we get to try that for the first time. We're going to do a little taste comparison. Now, we've had the moose jerky quite a bit over the years. How many times do you think we had it?
A lot. We have it at least like once a year.
Yeah,
Every other year.
Like I said, I've made probably 35 pounds of jerky out of the ground moose over the last 7 years, so we're pretty used to it. It's good stuff. I like it. The ground meat, it's crunchy. We dry it out quite a bit. You know, this kind of reminds me of like the Wild West or the frontier days, kind of jerky you might have back then. Hard and crispy, kind of like a pemmican.
A what?
Pemmican.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give the whole muscle jerky from the deer Dad just shot last week a try.
Got piece. Very sweet.
That's good.
Kind of soft. I like it.
Yes, this whole muscle jerky is just kind of like stand up to store-bought jerky.
But fresher.
Exactly. It's delicious. Wow. That's much better, in my opinion, than the ground jerky.
I like them both. Making a sandwich.
Oh, yeah?
I'm a weirdo.
Well, I think the verdict's in. I think from now on, out of our deer, we're going to make whole muscle jerky.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.